brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Trumpet's Call. I'm Maria. Pray that you're blessed today. Today's session is an addendum. It's an addition within the series that I have been doing on diseases and demons and Pharmakeia. And the Most High wanted me to share a bit of my testimony regarding some things that I had experienced and learned just in the course of living. And if it helps or blesses someone, then I'm happy to share it. So I'll jump right in. While I was still a part of the Christian church, one of the things that I remember was the day that I was talking to a fellow believer, fellow sister in the Most High, who was telling me that she was doing yoga training and she was becoming a yoga teacher. And I remember saying to her, "You do yoga?" I said, "Isn't yoga demonic?" And she said, "No, it's good exercise." I said, "And you're doing the yoga training and that's working out for you? Don't they teach you their philosophy and their religion?" And she said, "Well, they do teach you their philosophy, but I ignore that part. And I just focus on learning the poses because it really is good exercise." And I thought, oh, okay. So up until that time, that was not something that I did. I did Pilates. When I would go to the gym, I really enjoyed Pilates. I enjoyed the nature of, using your body as a foil against itself and being strong. So that was something I enjoyed, but yoga wasn't something that I would allow myself to participate in because of my belief system regarding it being a part of a religion, the religion of Hinduism. So, I guess a year or two went by and they started offering yoga lattes at my gym. So it was a fusion between yoga and Pilates. And I thought, hey, I'll try that. It's still Pilates, right? So I started doing yoga lattes and I was really good at it because I was, strong and flexible. So it was a good combination for me. And I really enjoyed doing the yoga lattes. And, eventually they started offering yoga classes and I found myself, I'll just do it. It's just stretching. So I started doing yoga and I was quite good at that too. And I was just doing it at my local, gym, I think it was Gold's Gym at that time, but there are no more. And so, at least in my area, so I was just doing yoga a few days a week at the local gym. And then I transitioned from doing yoga at the local gym to doing yoga at a yoga studio. And that's, once you start doing yoga at a yoga studio, that's hardcore because it's like there's no distraction with, fitness classes and exercise bikes and treadmills. It's just all yoga. It's just straight up, that's your focus. And so they do a better job, a more thorough job of bringing in some of the philosophies, even while being part of the yoga class. So I did that for a few years, and then they started asking me, "You should do yoga training. You're really good at yoga. You're really good. You're really flexible. You're really this. You should consider doing yoga training." And keep in mind, if you attend yoga classes, eventually they will ask you to do yoga training because it's a really good source of revenue for them. That's like $2,000 to $4,000 for each student. So I've since learned that everybody's good enough to become a yoga teacher. That's why we have so many of them. Because it's a vanity thing for someone to say, "Hey, you're really good at this. You should become a teacher." So anyway, eventually I bit. I took the bait, so to speak, and I did yoga training. And I learned some things in yoga training that were interesting. And I found myself engrossed in this thing that I had told my friend at church a few years before that, "Oh, are you sure you want to do that?" And that's how sin works. And that's how Satan works. It's very subtle. I go from saying, "Are you sure you want to do that?" to becoming a yoga teacher myself. So I became a yoga teacher. I went through yoga training. It was hard. It was a lot of physical work, but I did it and I became a yoga teacher and I actually began to teach yoga. That's how far I went into this thing. But what happened was, it wasn't so much the yoga teaching as much as it's the philosophy, because yoga, I don't care what anybody says, it is a part of a Hindu religion. It is. They do yoga to prepare themselves for meditation. Okay. And if you want to stretch your body to prepare yourself for prayer, fine, have at it. All power to you. Stretching is great for the body, but nobody owns stretching. Yoga is a series of postures, many of them named after fallen deities, that is linked to a religion. That's what it is. Don't let anybody tell you any differently. I had some really strange and mystical experiences while practicing yoga. I'm not going to go into it here, but suffice it to say, it was not godly. Okay? So the point I wanted to make was not me getting into yoga and falling into that trap, because it ended up being something that the Most High, I believe, is using. Because yoga is, I believe, a gateway drug. Yoga is a gateway drug into the occult, into the New Age. Many people start innocently enough doing yoga, and then they find themselves doing mantras, and then they find themselves meditating, and then they find themselves clearing their mind, and then they find themselves attending seances, and before you know it, you're involved in, it didn't go that far for me, but you find yourselves, I did go to a shaman though, it went that far for me. I'm telling you, it's a gateway point, and the enemy is so subtle that he will drag you into sin and drag you into things, but he'll do it in such a slow rate that you don't see that you're being dragged. Okay? So that's the first warning. The first warning in the testimony is be aware of what you engage in. If there is something that you're engaged in that's linked to something unwholesome, know that whatever you involve yourself in, if there's a link to the occult, you too are linked because of your involvement in it. Whatever we involve ourselves in, we're giving tacit consent to that thing. Okay? So am I sorry I did the yoga training? Yes and no. I'm sorry that I did something that was displeasing to the Most High and got myself involved in something that only the Most High, through the prayer of my family, could drag me out of. But I'm glad I had the experience of now being able to recognize the New Age in things. I can see it because I've experienced it. Because I've experienced it, I can see how the New Age is all over the Christian church. It's all over the place. They're doing their mantras and they're doing their meditations. I can see it now. I could see what I couldn't see before. And that's one of the reasons I knew I had to come out of it. So I'm grateful to the Most High for allowing me to go through what I went through in order to come out on the other side a little bit more wise. Okay? Sometimes that's the way it works. But there was something else I wanted to mention. I believe that the Most High would have us to know. One of the things I learned while I was doing yoga training, I did some additional yoga training in what's called Yin Yoga. So the yoga that you know of as yoga is called Yin Yoga. There are two types. Yin means the more active, pose after pose, asana after asana, where you're flowing in the different poses and things like that. That's the traditional yoga that most people know of. Most people don't know of what's called Yin Yoga. Yin Yoga was developed in the 1970s by a martial artist, Paulie Zink, where he took some of the elements of the poses that he was using in yoga and some of the elements of martial arts. And his goal was to develop something that would target the connective tissue. So Yin Yoga in and of itself is a type of exercise that targets the connective tissue in the body, that fascia in the body. So while Yin Yoga is a more active, fast-paced, faster-paced form of exercise, Yin Yoga is more slow-paced. You can, for example, sit in a Yin Yoga pose for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. The body itself is composed of a skeletal structure, and you've got, of course, muscle on top of the skeleton, and you've got blood vessels that run within those. And then on top of all that is the skin. In between the muscle and the skin is something called fascia. Okay? And fascia is connective tissue. It's connective tissue in the body that holds the body together. There's fascia in between the skin and the muscle, giving structure to the body. There's fascia in between the internal organs. The fascia is described as like sausage casing like material that holds everything in and holds everything together. If you've ever cleaned a chicken and seen that white stuff on the outside of the chicken muscle, that's fascia, that's connective tissue. And so the body is filled with connective tissue. There's lots of it everywhere in the body. So this connective tissue, fascia, which is made of collagen, it not only surrounds your internal organs, but it also surrounds your nerves and your tendons and your ligaments. It surrounds all of these different elements of your body. So it really does help to hold your body together and to give it structure and to help with its function. And so to have an issue in your fascia or problems in your fascia is to have problems in the body, because the fascia covers so much of your body. That fascia has a blood network and it gets blood flow, and it's something that can develop blocks, okay, that affect the muscle. So if you have an injury, for example, and you hurt your arm, and you start favoring that arm, you don't use that arm after a while, you've developed an injury in the muscle, but the fascia will lock it up. The fascia on top of the muscle will lock up and restrict your range of motion. And if you continue to not use your arm, you'll find that becomes a permanent disability, a permanent injury where you cannot use your arm. You can't stretch it out maybe like you used to, because the fascia holds trauma. And that's one of the things I learned in Yin Yoga. I went all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia, to learn under one of the masters of Yin Yoga. And we learned that when you're doing yin poses, when you're holding a static pose for long periods of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes, and you're allowing the muscle to relax by having the fascia to release and all that's in the fascia to release, you are not only stretching out your muscles, but they would teach us that you're releasing things, emotions, traumas, experiences that you held on to, but that you didn't really release. You didn't allow yourself to fully, quote unquote, process it. So this is one of the things we were taught. And so, okay, all right, fine. So, personal experience. I started doing a lot of Yin Yoga because I like the idea of releasing things from my body, from my past, and also becoming more flexible. So I started doing a lot of Yin Yoga. And do I still stretch? Of course I still stretch. Do I still allow myself to sit in poses and hold them? Yes, I do, because I'm not yogaing, I'm stretching. No one owns stretching. So I stretch my body. And when I would stretch my body, even in the middle of a yoga class, during a yin class, I would start to cry, or I would get angry, or I'd get hot, or I'd get cold. I found myself experiencing these things like, where is this coming from? Why am I weeping like I'm releasing some pain? And they would tell us in the class, you're releasing emotions that's been trapped in your fascia. You're releasing anger, you're releasing rage, you're releasing trauma. And I'm thinking, maybe there's something to this. And so now that I'm on the other side of that experience, I can look back and say, when we were talking about in the original video about the body and about demonic spirits being lodged in the body, I believe if it's going to be lodged anywhere, it's going to be in the fascia. Because it's like I don't want to call it a breeding ground, but it's a place in which the body does hold on to trauma. I'm speaking from personal experiences. I have held a pose before and had no idea why I was feeling so sad or such depression, and all of these emotions would come up, or memories, things that I hadn't thought about in a long time. And because I was a believer, even during the time of doing yoga, I would pray. I would pray when I would ask the Father, whatever this is, please heal it. And I would then forgive people, and I would ask for forgiveness while I was doing this thing. So I turned it into something that would serve me and the Most High as He allowed me to heal. But I want to say that the fascia, I believe, is the area where there's trauma, where there's the hurts and the pains of the past are being kept, are being held. Because what you don't deal with, you stuff. And what you stuff gets stored in your body. They used to tell us that our issues are in our tissues. and I believe that to be true. There is no feeling that you've ever had, no level of pain or depression or anxiety or fear that you've ever had that you have not dealt with that just went away. It didn't go away. You lodged it in your body. It's in your body somewhere, and it's causing dis-ease in your body. And whenever you take something that you've experienced that's been traumatic or painful or even a physical injury, and you don't deal with it, you protect it, and you don't want anyone to touch it or heal it or allow the Most High to shine His light of truth on it, it festers spiritually and sometimes physically. And once it festers, it becomes a breeding ground for demonic spirits because they're drawn to trauma. Okay? So if you hold unforgiveness in your body, you are attracting spirits, demonic spirits of unforgiveness and others who come along or travel along with them to enter into your body and take up residence in that space, in your fascia or in other places in your body. There are many of us who are demonically oppressed, not possessed, but oppressed, and we don't know how that happened. It happens through sin. And it happens through not allowing the Most High to help us to process our emotions properly. Emotions are called emotions for a reason, because it's essentially energy. Because when you get angry, isn't it just energy? It's energy in motion. It's meant to, you feel it and then it moves through and then it's gone. But if you take that anger or that fear and you feel it, but then you stuff it, it's no longer in motion. It's stuck in your tissues. It's stuck in your fascia. It's stuck in you. And until you are able to take it to the person who hurt you, or take it to the Most High, or just choose to forgive or process those emotions in somehow or some way, it's stuck in your tissues. It's stuck in your body, and a breeding ground for demonic spirits to come and oppress you. As a people, we have experienced lots of trauma and lots of hurt, and those issues are in our tissues. And demonic spirits, they not only are attracted to trauma in the tissues, they also travel in family lines. So if you didn't deal with the trauma and then you die, and when you die, those demonic presences vacate your body, guess who they're going to find? Your descendants, because they feel they have a right to it. Because if you haven't dealt with the trauma, undoubtedly, you have somehow spiritually passed that on to your children, or your grandchildren, or your great-grandchildren, or so on and so forth. So part of the healing that the Most High desires to do for us is to cause us to lay aside every weight. The Bible says to lay aside every weight and the sin. Not only do we need to lay aside the sin and cease and desist in sin, but also the weight, the burden, the unforgiveness, the pain of that spouse who abused or mistreated us, the pain from your third grade teacher who told you that you weren't smart, or all the things, the master's whip or his lash, or whatever it is that's been lodged in us as a people. The Most High desires to heal, but we have to let Him touch it. And like I said, within the fascia, once things begin to be lodged, it's very painful to touch. When I would sit in a yin pose for long periods of time and I started to feel the fascia release what was in it, it was painful. You would feel feelings like popping and burning, and it was a very unpleasant sensation. And lots of times the tears would come because it would hurt so bad. But you sat in it. And if you sat in it, after a while, you'd get on the other side of that pain. And then you'd begin to feel the muscles underneath the fascia begin to release and begin to settle out. It began to become more flexible. And the next day was always great because it was like, wow, I can really feel like I've allowed my muscles to stretch out some because the fascia released all the trauma and all the pain and all the knots that were in it. The Most High needs to touch our places of pain in order to bring about healing. He needs to get His hands and His grace in there and touch those places within us that hurt, those places in us that we want to protect, that molestation that happened when you were a child, that molestation that you did to some other person, those places in us where we've sinned and maybe we ask for forgiveness, but we haven't forgiven ourselves. All of those places are breeding ground for demonic spirits. So we must be concerned that the medicine that's out there today comes with the potential for demonic oppression and possession, because it does. I believe it does. But also we have to be equally concerned about the weight and the sin that besets us. So sin is a breeding ground for demonic activity, but so is hurt and pain and trauma undealt with. So I can see more and more clearly every day as the Most High gives me the ability to look past the things of my past, to look past the pain of the past, to forgive, to sit in the yin pose of His grace and let Him deal with my pain, to let Him get in there and help me, to confess my faults before Him and before my brothers and my sisters. If there's something in your life that you've done or that you've experienced and you're afraid to tell anybody, that's a breeding ground for demonic activity, because it's a trauma that still has power over you. There are people who've experienced horrendous and horrific things in their past, yet they can freely talk about it because it no longer has power over them. But if something still has power over you, the test is, can you talk about it with someone? Can you mention it with someone? Do you feel shame or guilt? If you feel that, it's festering and you need to get it out because it's a breeding ground. I believe I've said what the Most High wanted me to say. I've shared what the Most High wanted me to share. Feel free to ask any questions that you would desire to ask in the comment section. Pray that you have received what the Most High desired for you to receive, if anything, from this message. And I thank you for once again joining me on the channel. I know that these are all serious subject matters that we've been talking about with regard to demons and diseases and the things that we do. There's paganism built into the very fabric of the world in which we live. We've been living in Babylon for a long time, and a lot of its customs we've adopted and made our own, including its holidays and its patterns of exercise, and even the way we interact with each other, the days of the week, all pagan names, the months of the year, all based on pagan Roman calendars. And so there's so much of the way we live that's been built on paganism. It's hard and difficult to extricate ourselves from it, as the Most High is telling us to come out of Babylon. So I pray that this message blesses you and that you are encouraged to stretch your body. Stretch your body. And when something happens in your life to cause you hurt and pain, allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to fully process it. Feel it. Take it to the Most High. Cry about it. Hit a punching bag. Do whatever you need to do in order to process the emotions properly and then let them go. I saw this exercise on television once. It was talking about how people carry stress in their bodies. And there were these two swans, and they were on the water. And in the program, they were talking about how animals tend to not carry stress in their bodies because they allow themselves to fully process the emotions that they're feeling. So these two swans were on a body of water, and they started arguing with each other or disagreeing with each other. They were like pecking at each other and disagreeing and just flapping their wings at each other and really angry at each other. And after they were done disagreeing with each other, both of them flapped their wings really hard and flapped their wings, and then they went on. And the interviewer or the narrator said that what they were doing in that is they were releasing that excess built up energy that had come about as a result of their disagreement and their argument, and then they released it and they let it go. So I want to encourage us to be like swans. Release the built up, pent up energy from our bodies, the anger, the pain, the bitterness, the unforgiveness. Flap our wings, release it, and let it go, so that we can be free to move on with the Most High, and so that we can be free to move on with each other in proper, loving relationships, being soft with one another. That's something that the Most High has been working with me on as of late. Be soft, because He is soft. Be gentle, for He is gentle. So we could all use some softness and some gentleness right now. So I pray you're blessed. I pray that the Most High bless and keep you. I pray that He makes His face to shine upon you and grant you peace. May He heal you in the deep, dark places and shed His light of truth upon them. May He lift up His countenance upon you and grant you peace. Peace, shalom, meaning freedom from sickness, illness, botheration of any kind. Thank you for joining me once again at Trumpet's Call, brothers and sisters. I love you all with the love of the Messiah, and I pray that you're well today and that you will allow this message to penetrate and to bring healing. In Yahushua Jesus' name I pray. Amen and amen. Shalom.